Hello, welcome to this lesson on aggregate supply. Here we have aggregate supply with the same idea as last time. We have the price level of the economy and the real GDP of production in our economy. Now, aggregate supply is the production of everything in our economy, the supply of everything. There's actually three different ranges of the supply curve. First, we have the Keynesian range, and the Keynesian range shows us aggregate supply when resources are being underutilized. Like a bunch of people are unemployed, a very excessive amount of people. Then we have the intermediate range, which we are going to call short run aggregate supply. And this happens when some resource prices, including wages, are sticky, which means they don't change when other prices change. Finally, we have the classical range, which we're going to call the long run aggregate supply. And in this range, all resource prices, including wages and everything else, are flexible, which means they can adjust, they can change. We're going to be using a similar model, but changing it up a bit to focus only on short run and long run aggregate supply. So here we have short run aggregate supply sloping upwards like that, just like in this range right here. And it shows us that resource prices are sticky. For example, wages are sticky, they're not going to change in the short run. And here we have long run air supply, just like this part right here. And it shows us that resource prices are flexible. Like wages, people can ask for different wages in the long run, they're flexible. The long run air supply curve also is going to show us the economy at a level of production of full employment. So LRAS, long run aggregate supply curve, shows real GDP at full employment. But let's go back to short run aggregate supply first over here. So short run aggregate supply slopes upwards like this. It's an increase in the price level is shown by a movement upwards from point A to point B along the short run, I'm going to say SRES curve. This will lead to a higher real GDP supply. Why does this happen? Because businesses can profit by raising prices in the short run since resource costs have not yet gone up. So they can raise their prices, wages are still low, so the difference is their profit. In this example right here, we have a decrease in the price level is shown by a downwards movement along the SRES curve from A to B, and this will lead to a lower real GDP supply. Why does this happen? Because businesses do not profit by lowering prices in the short run, since resource prices are sticky and have not yet gone down. So now we have the opposite. So wages are not changing, but they're lowering their price, so now they're losing money. So aggregate supply is all about production, producing things. And these things are the major things that can impact production. You got technology and productivity, government regulations and actions on production, and resource costs and availability. All of these are going to impact production in the short run. Here you can see that if there's less total production in the short run, the SRAS curve is going to shift to the left. This is the same as when we talked about stagflation back in the Phillips curve video. This is because we are producing less. That's why we have less supply, and lower jobs means more unemployment. When you see less production, short run aggregate supply is shifting to the left. And if there's more total production, then short run aggregate supply is going to shift to the right. Now let's switch it going to long run aggregate supply. So here's the long run aggregate supply curve. Remember, it shows us production at full employment levels. It's the economy's maximum sustainable capacity, how much it can sustain at its natural state. This is the place where the economy is at its natural levels. In the long run, though, changing prices does not impact production. Why is this? Because resource costs are flexible and will move with prices. So this prevents businesses from making profits or losses in the long run. Production is determined by resource availability, not resource costs, and technology, and not prices in the long run. So, for example, if a business raises prices in the long run, workers are able to ask for a higher wage. So, they're not really going to profit because they're going to cancel out. Same thing if business lowers prices and people start losing their jobs, they can agree to lower wages and their losses will cancel out. Here you can see that the long run aggregate supply curve is shifting to the right. Well, since this shows production at full employment, for this curve to shift, you have to have an increase in production at full employment. And the only thing that can cause that are more resources, technological innovations. These are the things that can lead to a right shift of the LRAS curve, showing that there's an increase in the potential real GDP level of the economy at full employment. This is the same as when we went and looked at the PPC curve, the production possibilities curve. It's the same as when we shifted the production possibilities curve to the right. They're both showing an increase in production at an efficient level. Full employment is the efficient level of the economy. Same thing here. Any point on that curve was efficient. They're both shifting to the right to show that we are producing more at our efficient levels. And if we were to produce less at our efficient levels because resources were completely wiped out, um, or something like that, then both the long run air supply curve and the production possibilities curve would shift to the left. That's going to be all for this lesson. See you next lesson.